Hi. Welcome to our video tutorial. In this video tutorial, we'll see how to implement exception handling mechanisms in C#. Exception handling is more like making our project or making our code robust or resistant to failure. So for that, first let me show you an example, simple example. Let's create project exception handling training, and now let's do one function that divides the two values. Okay, so let's accept two values from our user. Please enter first value int first console.readline. Let's copy that and ask for the second. Now in this function I just wanted to divide the two numbers, so int result equal to first divided by second value. Now I have to provide, or I have to show the result to the user. Console.readline to pause. Okay, so let's test our application. 6 2, so the result is 3. It's fine. Okay, now let's try something. Let's divide 8 by 0. What do you think is going to happen? Expectedly, our function or our application is going to crash. It's going to stop working because it's a mathematically wrong calculation to do. When we click or when we press enter, we'll get divide by 0 exception. It's an exception and it was unhandled. Okay, what I should do is, it's not fair to quit, or it's not professional to quit our application or to exit our application like this whenever something happens. Okay, so there are two things we can do. The first one, as long as, or if we know what's going to happen, or if we can check that, if we can check the values for any possible failure, then we have to check, which means we have to write if second value equal to 0. Okay, so this is just validation. First of all, if I'm going to did division operation, then I have to make sure that the second value is not 0. That means validation. I have to validate the input because I'm not restricting the user for anything. The user can enter any value. Okay, so I have to make sure that the value doesn't violate the operation rules. Now it's violating mathematical law, so I have to check for it. It's validation. Exception handling comes beyond that. Let's see. Let's work on validation now. So before I try to divide the numbers, here I have to check if second equal to 0. If second is equal to 0, I have to say console.writeline the second value cannot be 0, else we'll do the calculation. Yeah, so if second is 0, I'm not going to calculate. Rather, I will provide the user with a specified informative message to correct her input. Let's try this. Now the second value is 8, then our application is not going to exit or is not going to crash. Rather, it will tell the user an explanatory message. This is called violation. This is called validation. Using validation, we can prevent most of exceptions. But still, there is one more. Let's see. First value 8. The second value, what if the user enters via character? Letter D. What am I supposed to do? Okay, so these are exceptions. I'm not expecting to get this kind of values. I did validation for expected values, but there are always exceptions. You can't anticipate every occasion or every scenario, so you have to think for exceptions. Now, in this case, the system is going to crash. Why? There is a format exception. Because we give it a string value and it's a character, so it's not possible to parse the character D to integer, so it fails. We can't anticipate this for now. So what we can do is we implement exception handling, which means we did validation for known issues, but anything else, if anything happens that I don't expect to happen or I don't validate, then it should go to exception. The system shouldn't crash at any given point. So if there is anything happens that I didn't handle or I didn't anticipate to happen, then it should go to exception. Now let's see how to define exception, how to handle or how to manage exceptions. The point is, the syntax is, here we call it try-catch statements. We have a keyword try, so anything between opening and closing tag is going to be tried. If anything happens, catch it. Okay, simple. So all our code will go in the try block. If the thing works successfully in the trial, then no need to come to catch. So only this process will flow and our system works perfectly. But if any exception, any error that I didn't handle comes up, if any error occurs, then the try block fails. It tries to work, it tries to do this package or this section of the code, but if anything happens in the middle, in the process, it will come to catch. It won't crash or quit our application. Rather, it will give informative message to the user. Console.writeLine invalid inputs. Please check the values. Okay, now when we say this, our user will know what happens or what went wrong. So this is what we call exception handling mechanism in C#. Let's run our application. The user can enter the first value as a character 2 Okay, so we have to immediately answer that invalid input. So it's an exception that I didn't expect to happen. Okay, so this is simple exception handling mechanism. We can take it further, like what type of exception is occurring, because as we can see before, when our system is crashing, every exception, every crash has its own type. So we can identify that. Now we are only saying invalid input because we are accepting two inputs. But if we are doing complex projects, then we don't know what went wrong. We don't exactly know what is the problem. Now I know the problem because I'm taking two values and making a single operation. So if any exception occurs, it's going to be about invalid input. But what if there are other reasons to come to this catch? Then I have to make sure that I provide meaningful and easy to correct error message to my user. So what I can do is, in the catch, I define the type of exception. Okay, exception is a generic one. As you can see, we have a lot of exceptions. Exception handling. We have format exception, field access, index out of range, insufficient memory exception, invalid cast, invalid operation. There are multiple exceptions defined in C#. So depending on the error we face, we can identify which type of exception occurs, and based on that we will provide a meaningful error message for our user. But if we say exception, it's just a generic one. Okay, so I hope exception handling, basics of exception handling is clear. If there is any unclear points, or if you have any questions related to it, please leave us a comment in the comment section below. Thank you very much for attending our video tutorial. Also make sure to subscribe to our YouTube video channel to get notifications when we add new video tutorials. Thank you very much for watching.